Airport staff kicked out Keanu Reeves, but regretted everything when his true identity was revealed. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories so we don't allow loitering. Here the security officer barked. The man, disheveled and quiet, merely nodded and grabbed his worn duffel bag. Moments later someone gasped, "Wait, that's Keanu Reeves." It was a chilly October evening in 2019 at the Los Angeles International Airport, a bustling hub where thousands cross paths daily among the chaos. 54-year-old Keanu Reeves stood near gate 12, looking like just another weary traveler. His signature black jacket and tousled hair gave him a rugged appearance, but his tired eyes hinted at something deeper, a long day or perhaps a heavy heart. Keanu wasn't alone. Somewhere in the terminal there was a woman. Her name was Emily Carter, a 32-year-old flight attendant known for her kindness and an uncanny ability to recognize faces. Emily had always been a fan of Keanu's movies, not just for his acting, but for the stories of his humility that circulated online. She had no idea she was about to experience one of those stories firsthand. The scene unfolded when Keanu, mistaken for a homeless man, was asked to leave the lounge area. He hadn't booked a first-class ticket, nor had he demanded VIP treatment. Instead he waited quietly in the economy section, his phone in hand, scrolling through photos of an event he had attended earlier, a charity gala for underprivileged kids. Emily spotted the commotion from a distance. She noticed the man's calm demeanor as he nodded to the staff member who asked him to leave. It was unusual, almost suspicious, how he didn't argue or explain himself. Something about his face tugged at her memory. That can't be him, she thought, her heart racing as she approached. By now, several passengers had turned their attention to the man being escorted out. Some whispered, others openly stared. A young boy holding a John Wick action figure tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing toward Keanu. Emily overheard a passenger say, "Why would he be here of all places?" As Keanu made his way toward the exit, he stopped to help an elderly woman struggling with her luggage. He didn't hesitate, lifting the heavy suitcase with ease and a warm smile. The woman thanked him, oblivious to who he was. Emily watched, her suspicions solidifying. She couldn't let him leave, not like this. Gathering her courage, she hurried after him, calling out, "Excuse me, sir." Keanu paused, turning to face her with the kind of gentle smile that could melt even the most skeptical heart. "Are you?" she began, her voice trembling before she could finish. A man in a suit rushed up, panting. "Mr. Reeves, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you," the man said, his tone apologetic. He handed Keanu a boarding pass for a private flight. Emily's jaw dropped. The security officer now realized his mistake, stammered, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves, I didn't know." Keanu shrugged, brushing it off. "It's okay. You're just doing your job." But Emily couldn't let the moment end there. She knew she had to say something, anything, before he disappeared. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly, "thank you for being you." Keanu smiled again, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. There was something unspoken in that gaze, a connection that neither could explain. As he walked toward the private jet, Emily stood frozen, clutching the pen and notepad she had instinctively grabbed, hoping for an autograph. Little did she know this wasn't the end of their story. As Keanu disappeared into the distance, Emily felt an ache in her chest, a strange mixture of admiration and sadness. She couldn't explain it, but something about him stirred emotion she hadn't felt in years. Her eyes lingered on the empty space where he had been, replaying his quiet humility and the profound loneliness she thought she saw in his eyes that night. Emily couldn't sleep. The airport lights outside her window blurred as she scrolled through articles about Keanu. She read about the tragedies he had endured, losing his best friend River Phoenix, the stillbirth of his daughter, and the heartbreaking end of his partner, Jennifer Sim. Each word cut deeper into her heart. It wasn't just the roles he played that made him remarkable, it was his resilience, his ability to show kindness despite unimaginable pain. A week later, Emily was working a red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York when A last-minute passenger boarded. She recognized him instantly. Keanu Reeves. He looked different this time, more relaxed. But his eyes still held that same quiet depth. Emily's heart pounded as she approached his seat. "Good evening, Mr. Reeves," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Welcome aboard." He looked up, surprised, then smiled warmly. "Hey, you're the one from the airport," he said. "Emily, right?" She was stunned. He remembered her name. "Yes, sir. I didn't think you'd remember me." "I remember kindness," he said simply. Throughout the flight, Emily couldn't help but steal glances at him. He spent most of the time reading a book, occasionally jotting down notes in the margins. Something about his presence was magnetic, and she felt drawn to him, not as a celebrity but as a person. As the plane landed and passengers began disembarking, Keanu lingered. He approached Emily at the galley, his hands tucked in his pockets. "Thank you for being so kind again," he said. "It's nothing, really," she replied, her cheeks flushing. He hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Do you have a break between flights?" Emily was taken aback. Was he asking her to spend time with him? She quickly checked the schedule. "One have about 2 hours before my next flight," she said. Keanu smiled. "Perfect. There's a little diner I know nearby. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee." Her heart raced. "I'd like that." At the diner they talked for what felt like minutes but turned into hours. Emily listened as Keanu opened up about his life, his struggles, his philosophy of living in the moment, and his desire to stay grounded despite fame. He was more vulnerable than she ever expected, and it broke her heart to hear the weight he carried. "You must think I'm a mess," he said with a self-deprecating chuckle. "No," she replied, her voice firm. "I think you're extraordinary." For the first time in years, Keanu felt seen, not as a movie star but as a man searching for connection. As they parted ways, he handed her a slip of paper with his number on it. "If you ever need a friend or just someone to talk to, I'm here," he said. Emily clutched the paper tightly, feeling an inexplicable sense of hope. She didn't know where this would lead, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. Little did they know this was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. For days after their encounter at the diner, Emily couldn't get Keanu out of her mind. His words, his gentleness, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. It was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, but her practical side kept her grounded. He was Keanu Reeves, an international star. She was just Emily, an overworked attendant trying to make ends meet. Why would someone like him ever think of her again? But he did. A week later, Emily received a text. It was a simple message. "Hi Emily, it's Keanu. I hope this isn't too forward, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation. I'd love to see you again if you're open to it." Her hands trembled as she read the message. She stared at her phone, her heart pounding, unsure of how to respond. Finally she typed back, "Hi Keanu, I'd love that too." What followed was a series of quiet, intimate meetings, dinners at out of the way restaurants, long walks and empty parks, and late-night phone calls that stretched into the early hours. Keanu revealed more of himself with each meeting, and Emily found herself falling for him, not as a celebrity but as a man. A kind, broken, beautiful soul who had endured so much and still found ways to give. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Keanu turned to her, his expression somber. "Emily," he began, his voice low, "I need to be honest with you. My life isn't easy. The things I've been through, the losses I faced, they don't go away, they linger. And being with me means carrying some of that weight." Emily reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I'm not afraid of your past, Keanu," she said softly. "We all have our scars. Yours just happen to be more visible." He looked at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't deserve someone like you," he whispered. "You don't get to decide that," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "I do. And I'm here, Keanu, for however long you'll let me be." For the first time in years, Keanu allowed himself to cry. He leaned into Emily, his shoulders shaking as she held him, her own tears streaming down her face. But the world wouldn't let them stay in their bubble for long. The paparazzi found them photos of their Quiet moments began plastering tabloids and flooding social media. Keanu Reeves' mystery woman became a trending topic. Overnight, Emily's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from strangers, friends and coworkers. Some were kind, but many were cruel, accusing her of seeking fame or fortune. Keane was devastated. "I'm so sorry," he said one night as they sat in her tiny apartment. "You didn't ask for this. You deserve a normal life, not this chaos." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't care about the noise, Keanu. I care about you." But Keanu wasn't convinced. He began to pull away, retreating into himself as the weight of the media frenzy and his own insecurities threatened to crush him. Emily tried to reach him, but his walls grew higher, his silences longer. One evening, after weeks of distance, Keanu sent her a message: "I need time to figure myself out. Please don't wait for me." Emily stared at the words, her heart shattering into a million pieces. She wanted to scream, to beg him not to go, but deep down she understood he wasn't pushing her away because he didn't care. He was doing it because he cared too much. But love, real love, doesn't just disappear. As Emily sat alone in her apartment, clutching the necklace he had given her during one of their happiest moments together, she made a silent vow: "This isn't the end, not for us." And somewhere miles away, Keanu sat in his empty home, staring at the same ocean they had watched together, wishing he had the courage to believe he was worthy of the love Emily had given him. Neither of them knew it yet, but their story was far from over. Months passed, and the space between Emily and Keanu stretched like an endless chasm. Emily tried to move forward, burying herself in work and surrounding herself with friends, but there were nights when the loneliness crept in, gnawing at her. She still wore the necklace Keanu had given her, a delicate silver charm in the shape of a star. It was a quiet reminder of the love she refused to believe was truly gone. Meanwhile, Keanu threw himself into his work, filming back-to-back projects, attending charity events, and immersing himself in anything that could distract him. But no matter where he went or what he did, Emily lingered in his mind, her laughter, her unwavering kindness, the way she had looked at him like he wasn't broken. It haunted him. He had convinced himself that pushing her away was the right thing to do, but now, in the silence of his nights, he wasn't so sure. One evening, Keanu found himself at a small bookstore in New York City. He often came here to escape the chaos, finding solace in the quiet miles. As he browsed, his eyes landed on a book that stopped him in his tracks, a collection of poems titled "The Weight of Love." He picked it up, flipping through its pages until a particular verse caught his attention. "Love isn't measured by time or distance, it's in the moments we carry, the echoes that remain even when we part." Keanu sat down in the corner of the bookstore, his hands trembling. The words felt like they were written just for him. He realized then that letting Emily go hadn't lessened the weight he carried, it had only added to it. Across the country, Emily was struggling to hold herself together. She had just landed back in Los Angeles after a grueling overnight flight. Exhausted, she shuffled through the airport, her mind elsewhere, when a familiar voice called out her name: "Emily." She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. It was Keanu. He stood there, his hair slightly longer, his eyes softer yet filled with something she couldn't quite place: hope, maybe even fear. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've been looking for you," he said, stepping closer. "I didn't know how to reach you. I thought you might be here working." He trailed off, his gaze dropping to the star necklace around her neck. "You still wear it?" he said softly. Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I never stopped for a moment." Neither of them spoke. The bustling airport seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them standing there, suspended in time. "I made a mistake," Keanu said, his voice cracking. "I thought I was protecting you by walking away, but all I did was hurt both of us. I was scared." Emily, scared of what it means to let someone love me when I've lost so much. "But the truth is, I can't stop thinking about you, about us." Emily's tears spilled over, and she stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. "Keanu, you didn't have to be perfect. I never asked for that. I just wanted you." His eyes filled with tears, and for the First time in years he allowed himself to hope. Do you think it's too late? Emily shook her head, a small trembling smile forming on her lips. It's never too late. As they stood there, their hands intertwined in the middle of the airport, the world moved around them, but they were no longer alone. This wasn't the end of their story, it was the beginning of something new, something stronger, and though the pain of the past still lingered for the first time in a long time, both Keanu and Emily felt a glimmer of light breaking through the darkness. Together they decided to take it one day at a time, rewriting the chapters of their lives hand in hand. As the weeks turned into months, Keanu and Emily began to rebuild what had once felt irreparably lost. They took things slowly, savoring every moment like it was a gift. Keanu introduced Emily to his quiet world: late-night motorcycle rides along empty streets, impromptu visits to bookstores, and shared meals at tiny, hidden diners where they could just be themselves. Emily in turn shared her love of flying, telling stories of the skies and the people she met, but their journey was not without challenges. One evening, as they sat together in Keanu's living room, surrounded by the warmth of a crackling fire, Emily brought up a fear that had been gnawing at her. Keanu, she began, her voice hesitant, do you ever worry about them? Them, he asked, setting down his tea. The world, she said, gesturing vaguely. The tabloids, the gossip, what people say about us. Keanu leaned forward, taking her hands in his. Emily, I've spent most of my life trying to live under the radar, avoiding the spotlight as much as I can. But with you, he paused, his eyes searching hers. With you, none of that matters. Let them talk, let them write their stories. The only story I care about is ours. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, leaning into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her ear. For the first time she believed him completely. Their bond deepened with every passing day. Keanu's friends and family welcomed Emily with open arms, and she quickly became a source of light in his life, a reminder that love could be simple even for someone like him. One winter evening, Keanu surprised Emily with a trip to a remote cabin in the mountains. Snow blanketed the ground, and the air was crisp with the scent of pine. As they sat on the porch wrapped in a shared blanket, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emily, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who sees me for who I am, not for the roles I play or the tragedies I've endured. You've taught me that it's okay to hope, to love, and to dream again, and I don't want to waste another moment without you by my side. He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring, its design simple yet timeless, just like their love. Will you marry me? Emily's breath hitched and tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Unable to speak, she threw her arms around him, whispering yes, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was a quiet affair held on a beach at sunset, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Keanu wore a black suit, his signature look, while Emily's simple white dress fluttered in the ocean breeze. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. Keanu promised to protect her heart as fiercely as she had protected his. Emily vowed to stand by him no matter what challenge his life threw their way. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the world seemed to pause. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, as if nature itself was celebrating their love. Years later, Emily and Keanu would sit on that same beach, now with their 2 children playing in the sand nearby. Keanu would glance at Emily, the woman who had saved him in more ways than one, and feel a sense of gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. Thank you, he would whisper, his voice barely audible above the waves. For what she'd ask, her hand resting on his. For believing in me, for loving me when I couldn't love myself, he'd reply. Emily would smile, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You've always been worth it, Keanu, always. And in that moment, with the sound of their children laughing and the ocean stretching endlessly before them, Keanu knew that despite everything he had lost, he had found something far greater: love, hope, and a family that made every hardship worth it. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and it was beautiful.